Present company excluded here, okay, Lauren? But Washington can be a very selfish place. Are egos getting in the way and the anger with Matt Gaetz for us having a speaker and the whole nation is suffering?
Of course it is. There are 224 alpha males and alpha females who are here in the Republican Party. We are here because we convinced hundreds of thousands of people that we are leaders.
To be clear, she didn't actually say that they are leaders. She just said that they were able to convince hundreds of thousands of idiots that they are leaders. I also do love the fact that she's bragging about being self-proclaimed alphas while using it as an excuse for the dysfunction of the Republican Party.
Having my favorite president call us and tell us we need to knock this off, I think it actually needs to be reversed. The president needs to tell Kevin McCarthy that, sir, you do not have the votes and it's time to withdraw. And with that, I yield. Thank you.
Well, there you have it, folks. None of the 224 self-proclaimed alphas were able to tell Kevin McCarthy he needs to step down. Instead, they had to ask their daddy, Donald Trump, the disgraced former president, to do their dirty work for them. Oh, wow, that's so alpha.
Sometimes we can be slow learners. You know, it's kind of ironic that we're doing this interview in the shadows of the Will Rogers statue from Oklahoma right behind me. And you remember what Will said about this whole business of learning. You can learn, people learn by reading, people can learn by observation, and sometimes people learn by just peeing on the electric fence for themselves. So that is a situation that is reminiscent of House Republicans right now.
Well, there you have it, folks. I'm glad I'm not the one that had to say it. That was Steve Womack from Arkansas. Not necessarily one of the brightest members of the Republican Party, but he is succinct when he says that his party is made up of slow learners and those who pee on electric fences. It really is shocking that they're so dysfunctional.
You know, we don't live in a democracy because a democracy is two wolves and a lamb deciding what's for dinner, okay? It's not just majority rule, it's a constitutional republic. And the founders set that up because they followed the biblical admonition on what a civil society is supposed to look like.
Well, there's the new Republican House Speaker, Mike Johnson, who, by the way, tried to overturn the will of the voters in 2020. I guess he has absolutely no regard for the Constitution, or perhaps he's just not familiar with it, given the fact that he doesn't seem to recognize the very First Amendment, being separation of church and state. He might not be an electric fence pisser, but he's certainly one of the slow learners.
Someone asked me today in the media, they said, it's curious, people are curious, what does Mike Johnson think about any issue under the sun? I said, well, go pick up a Bible off your shelf and read it. That's my worldview. That's what I believe.
Just pick up a Bible? Really? How does he feel about adulterer Donald Trump being in office? Perhaps he didn't know he committed adultery when he helped him get elected the first time, or when he was willing to forego all of the laws of the land and the Constitution itself when he tried to overturn the election for Donald Trump, the adulterer, in 2020. And maybe he still doesn't know that Donald Trump has been indicted for paying a porn star hush money to keep their affair a secret. What does the Bible, by the way, say about adultery? Well, according to Leviticus, the adulterer and the adulteress shall surely be put to death. But we all know that it is judgment for thee, not me. And his daddy, Donald Trump, is above the law, including his own biblical law, evidently. Speaking of the Bible, he's already been put to the test with this latest mass shooting in Maine. This mass shooter killed over 18 people, it sounds like, and he has already offered his thoughts and prayers and suggested it is much too early to politicize this mass shooting.
The problem is the human heart. It's not guns, it's not the weapons. At the end of the day, we have to protect the right of the citizens to protect themselves, and that's the Second Amendment. And that's why our party stands so strongly for that. I agree with the comments of your guests there. This is not the time to be talking about legislation. We're in the middle of that crisis right now. But I just want you to know, and I want the American people to know, that all the members of the House here are deeply concerned about the families involved and everyone. And we pray for the law enforcement officers that are doing that hard job tonight that most people do not have the bravery to do.
We can't talk about legislation while we're still mourning the deaths of another 18 people killed by a gunman. After all, it's the gunman that killed people, not the gun. So yes, he has offered his thoughts and prayers. Evidently, he's praying to the all-powerful God that allowed this to happen in the first place. Gosh, I have so much faith in his leadership. And this is truly a sinister tactic. We can't politicize a mass shooting. We have to mourn the loss of life from this mass shooting before we can get around to talking about legislation to prevent another mass shooting. But by the time we get around to that, there will have been another mass shooting that will once again prevent us from discussing legislation because we're going to have to mourn the loss of life from the next mass shooting. This is absolutely sinister and despicable and shows that these people have absolutely no spine and only bow to their overlords at the NRA. The cycle will always continue, and surely they will offer more thoughts and prayers. I'm David Balaban for Rebel HQ.